Okay, welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting of May 28th, 2019. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, citizen statements and petitions.
There's a proclamation from the COA for Mendon Board, from the Mendon Board of Selectmen to Georgia Dean, who's turning 100. Whereas longevity of life is a blessing for an individual and for a community which benefits from the knowledge, creativity, and experiences this individual will bring to all. And whereas the town of Mendon recognizes with respect and admiration the contributions of senior citizens to our community, and whereas Georgia Dean was born in Salem, Mass, June 8, 1919, is the mother of two grown children, Cynthia and Dean, moved to Mendon when she married James Ferrucci, and has resided in Mendon for 46 years since. And whereas Georgia is the founder and beloved teacher of the Dean School of Dance in Mendon in 1974 and the Greater Milford Ballet in 1980, both of which are still in operation, with the company performing its 39th Nutcracker in December. And whereas Georgia and her sisters Helen and Mary Ann performed professionally from 1938 until 1944 doing vaudeville. Georgia continues to entertain and amaze us with her performances locally and recitals at the Mendon Senior Center. And whereas Georgia's longevity stems from her continuing to be active physically, socially, and mentally without stopping. She also eats well, doesn't smoke, and rarely has a drink. And whereas the United States has the greatest number of centenarians in the world, and Georgia Dean should be honored for this 100 years on this earth. And now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the citizens of Mendon, Massachusetts, do hereby honor Georgia Dean for her long life and prosperity and wish her many more.
Congratulations.
That's amazing. She used to teach my daughter.
Excuse me.
Okay, next we have, do you want to take this, Amy?
Thanks for doing that, Amy.
Next we have reorganization of the board. So, is there a nomination?
I nominate Chris Burke to be chairman
Second.
for the next 6 years. Yeah, I'm only kidding.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You gonna vote for yourself or no?
Oh, no.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks, Mark, for your chairmanship for the last year.
You're doing that kind of fast, aren't you?
Oh, I'm happy to give it away.
You did such a good job with it, Mark.
Oh, thank you. I really was honored to be the chair.
Oh, I don't know.
No, it's not.
You know what? We move things around. Is it?
No. And I don't think Lonnie's is either, is it? Oh, it is. You get muted right from the start.
Yeah.
It's written underneath them.
Yeah, I know, but what the lights on?
Is that one?
So we're gonna have to. I was trying to help you out. So the center mic is now 1.
Okay.
Till we get that.
There you go. Okay. Now that we have an agenda of 30 items and a mic that works for my first night, thank you very much.
I'll help you through it.
I appreciate that. All right, so the next thing, correspondence to the board. We have first Millville Road dumping issue. So it looks like we received a letter from Patricia Finn regarding some, looks like some illegal dumping happening off of Millville Road.
Oh, yeah.
Looks like there's some mattresses, trash, tires.
Some of it looks old. Question as to whether or not it's on Mendon property or Millville property?
An extension of Grove Street in Millville. I mean, I don't know where the dump site is. I mean, it's a shame that somebody would dump there, but
Right.
I think that, has Alan gone down and looked at this? Do you know, Kim?
He's aware of the location.
Okay, but you're not sure if he went down and looked at this or
I
not?
don't believe that he has looked at this since we came in. It came to the Board of Selectmen, not to him, so we could certainly ask him to go down and take a look.
Well, he's on it. He's
Oh,
on
well,
the,
there you go.
It's really addressed to him, so.
Yeah, check it out, maybe see if the, just do an overlay with the town line maps and see where it does belong, not that
I
we
mean,
don't help
right,
pick it
even
up.
if it's not, I mean, if it's in Millville, I mean, we should still.
No, absolutely, but find out, and again, find out and try to, so is the road in, you have to go through Mendon to get to this road, or do you have to go through Millville to get to the Mendon portion of this road? It's kind of the question. Try to figure out who's or
responsible
at least
for it.
maybe even talk to Millville Police and whatnot to let them know, maybe to keep an eye on the area. Again, I don't know exactly how you get in there, so I guess we're looking at some maps, we can determine that.
Right, and she's also asking that we can, to block off a portion, because it's an unfinished road, so I think that's really a question for Alan, too.
Yeah, the question is, is that a private road? I mean, we
Right.
can't just go and block off someone's
Right.
private road. I think I know where she's talking about, you know, across from the town forest parking lot. There's like a little dirt road that goes, you'd have to, yeah, but I think I know where it is. And
Okay.
it might be private. I don't think it would be a public way, but maybe it is. We'll have to
You
look
can
at
check.
it.
Why don't we just have Alan take a look at it and report back to us?
Okay.
All right, so Kim, will you reach out to him and ask him to do it? Thank you. All right, second thing is consider the festival committee's request for a toll road on Saturday, June 1st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Route 16 and North Ave intersection. Can you turn my mic down just a little bit? It's echoing big time. Pat, can you turn my mic down just a smidge, please? Thank you.
I move to approve the festival committee's request to hold a toll road on Saturday, June 1st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Route 16 North Avenue intersection.
I'll second.
Excuse me? Oh, he's here. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd go to discussion next.
Yeah, discussion?
The date is incorrect.
Okay. What's the correct date?
No, we would like to do it on Saturday, June 15th,
Okay.
if that's possible. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Amended with the correct
Amended
date.
to June 15th.
You guys want to set a rain date just in case? Or are you going to do it in the rain?
We'll do it in the rain.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to do Sunday just in case.
Well, let's put it this way. Now that I spoke up, I'll do it in the rain.
All right.
I mean, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't allow it.
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, let's see. And consider a junk dealer license renewal for Main Street.
I move to approve the renewal of a junk dealer license for 4 Main Street, David Lowell.
Second?
Discussion on that. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't do that.
Nope.
And you all right?
All right, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. So consider a special one-day beer and wine license for Brothers of the Brush Mendon Fest.
I move to approve a special one-day beer and wine license for the Brothers of the Brush event, Mendon Fest, August 24th, 2019, from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.
A second?
I'll second that. Do we need to make note in the motion of the delivery dates? Or only because they're specified on it? Does the license have to span those dates, or is it only when you're serving it? Can't remember.
I think it's only when you're serving it.
Okay.
Okay.
Second.
So what is the Mendon Fest? Is somebody here from the Brothers of the Brush? Wants to talk about this?
And I
That
think
mic doesn't work.
this one's on.
How are you?
Hello. Mendon Fest is going to hopefully be an annual event for the community in Mendon. This year, we need to ask your permission to use the parks on Saturday, August 24th. No rain date. It'll be from 3 to 11. The festival committee will get our own general liability insurance. I'm going to assume you want Town of Mendon
Yep,
in the lower left
we've
corner.
already covered that. So we're already on as the additional insured for the policy. I already talked to,
So there's two different policies.
yeah.
They're gonna do a general liability. We have, the Brothers of the Brush have the liquor liability insurance. The festival committee will do the.
Right, we're gonna want both.
Right, but you want Town of Mendon listed in the
Yes.
lower left corner, okay. The only questions that we have is, we were hoping the liquor is gonna be, the beer garden is gonna be set up in the tennis court, as we have in the past. When we've had events in the past, it's been kind of hard for some families that have children or anybody under 21 to commingle in that area. We've talked with public safety. Public safety, we're going to have 2 police officers. One is going to be stationed in the beer garden, and the other one is going to roam the grounds during the event. Is it possible between the hours of like 3 and 7 to allow, accompanied by an adult, anybody under 21, if a family wanted to sit down and enjoy their dinner and someone wanted to have a glass of wine or a beer, just a limited period of time where we could allow the families to be together?
I don't know that it's,
I don't
where
know.
does the rule come from?
I know that, all I know is you can't go beyond the listed description of where you're gonna have the alcohol served.
Correct.
I don't know that it's limited to only
I
people
think-
over the age of 21. That might
In
be
the
more of
past,
an-
it has
That would be
been.
an insurance question.
Yeah, that's more of an, that's what I was just saying, it's probably an insurance recommendation.
Okay.
That's probably,
So I know that the age situation as far as bars and there's certain rules that we do have to follow, but for instance, when we own 50s, it was our decision to be 21 and over. So it's not a you just have to make sure that nobody under 21 is drinking.
Okay.
That's I think the issue.
Right.
Whether or not who's in town council might be able to.
I'm gonna guess that Maya's gonna say they don't want anyone under 21 in the beer garden area.
I would
That's
think
gonna,
so.
Well, that's why we wanted to ask that question. We were hoping that we would be allowed to do that just for a limited period of time between the hours of 3 and 7, what we would kind of call the dinner hour.
Right.
And then after that, nobody under 21 would be allowed back in that area.
right, well, I
So
mean,
it's kind of a new twist, and that's why we're running it by everybody to get their opinion.
we can ask.
Can I ask
mean,
a
that's the-
follow-up too?
Yeah.
Is that Maya, because I believe the liquor liability is going to be through a different insurance company other than Maya, so should we be asking them
We
or
need
both?
to ask
or-
all of them, because we
Okay.
need to be named additional insured on both of the policies, and
Right.
that means we have to have approval from Maya on both. So I would imagine,
Well, I don't know, John, who's the company you're using there?
Keefe Insurance.
So we're using a different company, but I mean, they're all insurance, insurance.
Well, we're using a different agent. I don't
Right.
know
No, I-
who the actual company is
Yeah.
going to be.
well, I mean, and do we have to specify, I don't think we'd have to specify it on the license, so it's really up to you. If you're fine with it, then we'll find out what is actually allowed, and then let them determine. If you're all right with till 7 o'clock, then so be it.
I mean, I think of it as like a restaurant in a way, you know, people are gonna be eating there and parents are responsible for their kids. You know, so if parents are paying attention to what's going on with their children and public safety and Brothers of the Brush are paying attention and you're all tip certified anyways.
Correct.
Right. Well, but we have time. I mean, if we you approve the license, and then we have time to reach out to Maya, and if they say, listen, we're gonna wanna triple this policy, if that's the case, then will be a judgment call when we meet again in June. I mean, that's, you know, if it's not an issue, then we're good.
Okay.
So how are you gonna ID everyone as they come up to the
Yes.
beer?
Yes, same thing that we've done in the past, except that we ran into situations where a mom wanted to have a glass of wine and she's inside the tennis court and she's trying to watch her child on the playground equipment. So it wasn't as friendly as we'd like to try to make it. On the other hand, we want to do this on an annual basis, so we want to have everything run smooth as it has in the past every time we do this so that we can keep doing it. So that's why we decided to ask for, if we could change things up a little bit, but for a limited time. At 7:15, we're gonna have a set change with the bands. So that would be a great break and a way of, you know, kind of controlling the situation.
As far as whoever's putting it on in the insurance companies, as you say, I mean, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned, I feel like
I mean-
people are probably trustworthy enough that we're probably not gonna have a big mess of death and destruction from people being inside.
My
the tennis
concerns are
court.
more like egress out of the tennis court. How do you limit the people, the number of people coming in and out of the tennis court?
So the way it's set up, there's only 2 entrances. The main entrance, I believe what they did last time, there was a table. You get a wristband if you're over 21. And there's a separate, where the actual beer trailer will be, is a separate exit on the other side.
And I assume you're gonna limit the number of persons to a certain amount that go in there, like, let's say, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, for
Oh, I think
safety
you-
reasons. I mean, we just don't want anyone getting
Absolutely.
Right, see, we weren't letting
phobic in
anyone,
that tennis court or have too many drinks,
Yeah.
and then and then a kid is lost in there.
I know you've already met with public safety, and I think the plan is to really involve them in
But
all
some of
ways.
those-
yeah, public safety is gonna have one police
Even
officer
with
stationed
that,
in that area,
the limit on
and
the
that
number.
is,
Right.
you know, specific to their assignment. The other police officer's gonna roam the grounds. We also have been in touch, obviously, with the other side of public safety, the fire department. So nobody leaves that area with a beer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the problem that you run into. At the farm to table, if someone went and got a beer and then wanted to sit under the tent where we had the meal, they couldn't do that.
Or if you could even like divide it even further, so like no kids past a certain point, but let's check with Maya and see. I mean,
Okay, well, that's what we want to throw out to you guys to see what you think.
I don't know how we made it through all those years with the Mendon Country Fair before we even had a beer garden.
Because we just did it.
We must have just been like, no, I don't get it.
It worked.
Yeah, yeah, people were adults.
So I think that covers everything that we need to talk about, other than the fireworks. The fireworks are gonna go off around 9 o'clock at night. The fire department is on top of that, and they know what we're doing. The area's already been pre-approved, so we're good to go. That's just kind of an update as to what we're up to.
Sounds like fun.
It will be. We'll see you all there.
All righty.
I think it's worth noting, so the intent of this event is to feature local vendors, groups. We're not necessarily doing like a kind of flea market type event. All the games and activities will be local nonprofits using it as fundraisers. You know, the goal is to make this really, truly a community event.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
All right. So I need a vote.
do you want to sign them individually as we pass that? Did you vote on it?
No, we're gonna vote on it right now.
Okay, we have so many things to sign tonight.
Send them down
Do you
if
want to
they-
do them at the end, or do you want to do them
Just send
one
them
at a
as
time?
they go.
Okay.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna move the agenda around a little bit because I can.
Taking over and
See what happens, Mark? All right, so I want to go to 28. Consider the appointment of Charles, I'm gonna butcher this, Chaparales? Did I say that right?
Close enough, yes.
All right. To position of Mendon Police Officer. You ready, okay?
scroll through the list here. 28.
So I'm actually asking you to do 29 and 28 for seniority purposes. So
29
You
first.
want me to do?
29 and 28 for seniority
Okay.
purposes. They
All
were
right,
listed on-
so we'll start with consider the appointment of John Coffey to the position of Mendon Police Officer.
So We did applications back in March and April to fill 2 open spots we had from officers that went to other departments. We took about a month and a half to do the interviews, then went about and did backgrounds, thorough backgrounds. I actually went to a couple of police departments with backgrounds too and completed them. After the completion of it, we were left here with John Coffey, who used to work here in Mendon 8 years ago, and Charles Chapralis from Dunstable. So Jack, he's been a police officer since 1995. He served in Mendon for quite a few years, and then we went through the financial crisis here where we laid off some people and he ended up going to Sherburne. He's been there ever since. Brings a lot of training experience to the table. Senior veteran officer with a lot of knowledge of the town. Jack's going to be able to fit right back in easily and maybe even show some of the new guys some things about the department that they don't even know yet. So Jack, great hire for the town. He was a great employee when he was here. Glad to have him back. Charles, same thing. He's been a police officer since 2003, the past 8 years for the Dunstable. Comes with a variety of experience and training. He's going to be able to step right in also. Probably by July, be on the roads. His biggest obstacle will just be learning the town and the streets. So we have 2 great candidates. I'm glad to bring them forward to you. I don't know if you have any questions for me or them about anything. So.
I was here when the financial crisis took place, so I'm glad to see that you're back, because it was probably one of the hardest things we had to do was to let people go when we went through this. So I'm glad I know that the program is back, and you're back.
Now you get to bring him back.
Right.
Redemption.
Hopefully we don't have to.
Don't even say that. Don't even joke about that. Don't even joke about that. So for seniority purposes, Jack has more time on the job in general, and he was a past employee here, so we're going to give him seniority over Charles. Charles knows about it because Jack has a few more years overall. And they'll both go under the new contract, so they'll be credited at certain rates and everything. I think you guys have in the appointment letter, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right, so Mark, I'll take a motion on
I move to appoint John Coffey to the position of Mendon Police Officer at step 5 pay rate of $12.6147 per week.
Second.
All right, all in favor on that?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and I'll take a motion on 28, Mark.
I move to appoint Charles Chapralis to the position of Mendon Police Officer at a step 5 pay rate of $12.6147 per week.
I'll take a second.
Second.
All in favor on that?
Aye.
All right, welcome aboard, guys.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll do a picture.
You want to do a photo op?
Gotta be in the town crier.
Moving right along.
Yeah. Have any more photo ops we have to worry about?
Keep them going.
Can we move those chairs out of the way real quick? Fantastic, thank you.
We've created a monster.
One more. Fantastic, thank you.
Michelle should just get it.
Yes, you should.
Oh,
Alrighty. So let's go back to number 8. Oh, I'm sorry, 7.
7?
Thank you. Let's see, consider a special one-day all alcohol license for the Earth event at Sultan Zoo.
Hold on. Did we read this one?
We signed it up.
Oh, no, okay.
I move to approve a special one-day all alcoholic beverage license for the Earth Limited event Friday, June 21st, 2019, from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Rain date is Friday, June 28th, 2019, 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. So this is just the same event we've been doing for the last few years, correct? Okay. Yep. Mrs. Brewer, do you want to come up and talk about it?
Sure, we will come. It's just an event that we have for my nonprofit at the zoo, and we raise money for conservation and education locally and globally. And so we have, our train ride's gonna run through the zoo, and we're just gonna have a couple little stations where we give conservation talks and serve some food and a drink at each station. And then everybody will come back up to the patio at Galliford's, which is already licensed.
Okay.
Excellent.
But you're not going to allow people to walk around with beverages, or are you?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think you did last time. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
clear on that.
Oh, I can't.
But I haven't read that,
Yep.
so, yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay.
So, one other thing, how do people get tickets?
It's online,
Okay.
and I have some in my car.
So find Betsy on the street, or you can go
Yeah.
online.
Absolutely.
All right, very
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Any other discussion on that?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That's always a fun event. All right, number 8, interview and consider the appointment of Todd Gleason to the Economic Development Committee.
I move to appoint Todd Gleason to the Economic Development Committee for a term to expire June 30th, 2021.
Second?
All right.
How are you?
Hey,
What's
Todd, how
happening?
are you?
How's
How are
everyone?
you?
Doing well.
Great.
Good, welcome. So you have an interest in the Economic Development Committee.
Well, yes, I do. Been involved in it for a number of years through the Blackstone Valley Chamber. I was chairman of the Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce for 5 years, and I've been chairman ex officio for the last, I want to say, 5 years as well. And obviously know many of you from that role. But always interested in helping the town, helping economic development in the town, smart growth, being pretty thoughtful and deliberate about how we grow and what type of businesses and what type of economic environment we create for our town, and being smart about it and balancing the needs of residents with the needs to drive a healthy tax base and revenue for the town.
I was wondering how long it was going to take before we sucked you in.
Yeah, well, I know Tom was very convincing. So
Good.
yeah.
Well, we're, from my opinion, I've known you for years. You've come in
Sure.
front of us a bunch of times.
Sure,
I'm excited that you want to step up.
great.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, no, I
100%.
think your experience at the chamber is really going to be helpful to us here in Mendon.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking the job.
All right,
Absolutely.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Did you read the?
You already did.
You read
Just
the
wanted to
motion.
make sure you got the dates in there. I don't want anybody sneaking out early.
No, we got it. Let's see, interview and consider the appointment of Jane Lowell to the local Historic District Commission.
I move to appoint Jane Lowell to the Local Historic District Commission as the Taft Homestead District Owner Representative for a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Second?
No discussion on that.
This is,
I mean, clearly she has the background to be doing this job, so.
I love your energy, Mrs. Lowell. It's awesome. What is, just so I know, what is the Taft Homestead District? I guess I just want to know for my own knowledge.
I made my house a historic district of one house, which I can do because this central district has been established. And I did it because we have enough land there where somebody can tear the house down and put a little subdivision in there. And, I mean, that's happening on North Avenue, it's happening everywhere, and I do not want that to happen. It's one of the original Taft houses.
Oh, okay, okay. All right. Any other discussion on that? All in
No.
favor?
Aye.
all right.
Very good. Let's see, interview and consider the appointment of Ruth P. O'Grady to the local Historic District Commission.
I move to appoint Ruth P. O'Grady to the Local Historic District Commission as a member at large for a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Second?
Okay, is Ruth here?
She is.
Yeah.
All right.
Right there?
Hi, Ruth. No, I mean,
I
yeah,
have no questions.
I have no questions.
No questions.
Any other discussion?
Thank you for volunteering.
That's right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so consider seasonal common vicular license, Mendon Driving Range, 37 Hastings Street.
I move to approve a seasonal common victual license to the Mendon Driving Range, 37 Hastings Street, pending the receipt of positive routing slips.
Second.
All right, so what do we have on this?
So the drive-in was sold, and the previous owner would like to continue operating the driving range part for the summer, so this would allow him to do so. And then there's a second license that would allow him to operate on Sundays. He needs an entertainment, that's the next one, entertainment license to operate on Sundays.
Yes, so Russell Brown, who was the former owner, is going to actually be the one to continue to run it for the person for the new owner, and that way it's just not sitting there for the summer until they decide.
Yeah, the only
what to
difference
do.
is it's only Thursday through Sunday.
Okay, cool.
This, just so you know, this license doesn't limit you Thursday to Sunday. That's a decision for you guys to make. This
Oh,
license,
okay.
you can be open Monday through Sunday.
Oh, great.
Yep.
So, wait a minute. All right.
You good?
Yep.
All right, any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I look forward to it, now I don't have to go travel to drive golf balls. And then consider a seasonal entertainment license on Sunday, Mendon Driving Range, 37 Hastings Street.
Hold on. Yeah. I'm just starting it. I move to approve the seasonal entertainment license for the Mendon Driving Range, 37 Hastings Street, pending the receipt of positive routing slips.
Second.
All right, so this is what you just explained, so they can operate on Sundays.
Correct.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Well, my question is, he's not the owner of the
So,
business.
right,
is
so what they did was the owner, so the owner obviously is Kevin Meehan that bought it.
Mhm.
He's leasing it to Russell
Okay.
to then be able to be the owner.
Oh, I see.
Right. So that Russell went and got the insurance that he needed and went through all that. So yes, Russell does no longer own the property, however, is going to
He's running
operate
the business. Okay.
Okay, you good?
Mhm.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 13.
When are you gonna open?
Well, I'm hoping that the weather's good next week or something.
Awesome.
Okay.
Hopefully before the kids get out of school, because it's short season, it's already
Right?
been
Right,
moving quick.
all right,
Good.
I'll be there.
So
Oh,
thank you.
good. Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, thank you.
I love going to dress for you. What? I love going to the range. Okay, moving right along.
13, consider offer to purchase town-owned property, 15 Inman Hill Road.
Chairman only.
Okay, thank you. I will take a motion.
Move to approve, no, that's not. I move to accept the proposal to purchase 15 Inman Hill Road from Bradley Elliott in the amount of $125,500. Yeah, the
Sorry.
proposal was from Bradley Elliott. That caught me too.
All right,
I'll second that. Was it is the only one we received? Did we receive multiple?
We've gone out to RFP 3 times
Yep.
for this property, we only received one proposal, it's approximately $10,000 higher than the minimum. There's some work that needs to be done on the lot, so this is fair market value.
It's actually a very decent price.
And we want to add more, she's been heading this up.
Just done with it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Discuss electronic voting. pass that down to Kim. Kim, you good?
Electronic voting?
Yeah, you good?
Sure, just 1 second. So after the last town meeting, there was some discussion about the different types of methodology in order to calculate votes at town meetings. So we started having a conversation electronically, the moderator and the town clerk and I, and we reached out to different communities to talk about different options, and so they've come tonight to talk a little bit further about that. One proposal that we can put forward is both Upton is currently commissioned a committee themselves in order to research this, including attending different town meetings, and then if they came back with an option, we could partner with them and we could share the devices for a cost. I know Oxford's just purchased devices as well, so that's the extent of where we are with it.
Okay. Is there obviously no action on this? Go ahead, Jay.
Up there or just stand back here?
It's up to you.
I'll come sit up here. These chairs are more comfortable. I did some research already. You know, I talked to a moderator of a town, I think Wayland, and Wayland is considered like the gold standard of electronic voting because they've been doing it for about 10 years now. And I talked to the moderator in Uxbridge, I've talked to people in Grafton, and I've got an offer to talk to somebody in Upton because they are researching it. I have no problem continuing to find some information out. The only hesitation I would have is there is a cost factor at every town meeting if we decide to go this route, and if it's something that we're not going to want to pay for, then we don't need to waste our time. I also did a little bit of research. I've been moderator for 10 years, so I went back through all of the warrants for 10 years to see how many times it was really critical that we might have needed electronic voting, and it's probably 2% of the votes. We've had about 850 votes, of which maybe there's been 7 or 8 secret ballots and maybe 15 hand counts in 10 years. So again, I have no issue with doing it. It's a fairly modern system, but there's a cost factor. Somebody's got to run the system. Somebody's got to put all the motions into the system and run it during a town meeting. There's some infrastructure work. That's my understanding at this point before I do any more research. So the question is this an expense the town thinks is worth doing? And I mean, I personally, I'm not sure that I think that we need to spend money on this when there's a lot of other things to spend money on.
I mean, that's impossible to know without knowing what the cost is.
Right.
So, I mean, and then how that compares to what our other priorities are. So hypothetically, it's yes and no.
Right.
At this point.
Well, so Uxbridge spent $27,000 on their system. They bought 1,000 hand clickers. Wayland spends $13,000 per town meeting, and they lease the system, but they also have 1,800 people that come to their town meetings. We don't really have that.
Say $13K per meeting?
Per meeting. But they have 1,800 voters average at a meeting. They had over 4,000 at the last one. Speaking of which, you're doing all these liquor licenses. Maybe if we did that for a town meeting, we'd get better attendance.
Yeah.
Just saying. Just throwing that out there.
Most of them are one-day
Can't do it in the
events.
school.
So are the town meetings. So if you want, like I said, somebody from Upton contacted me and said, look, I'll be happy to talk to you. I'm happy to continue to do some research, but like I said, even if it's $1,000 a meeting, which is probably the minimum you're going to be looking at for an expense, do you want to spend $1,000 a town meeting to run an electronic system?
Is it just a concern that the votes are being tabulated inaccurately? Is it? I'm just trying to figure out what the driver is on this.
I mean, the majority of the times we vote, it's unanimous. Electronic voting is going to slow that down a little bit. Times when there's a hand count, obviously it would be much quicker. Secret ballots, it certainly would be much quicker. But that's a small amount. But I don't know, people did talk to me after the town meeting with concern about one article. But beyond that, this is the first time it's come up to me, was this last town meeting.
I think it takes depending on the cost. I mean, obviously I don't believe that we should purchase our own system, but if we could partner with other communities, I think it makes sense, because taking the potential aspect of human error out of counting could make or break any article. So if the cost is minimal.
So would they be used for every single article that we have on the warrant, or would they be just on the controversial ones? I'm just trying to.
You don't have to. I mean, you're going to have to give everybody a clicker when they walk in the meeting.
Yeah.
They're then, you could use them on every article, certainly.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the process
You
is.
could use them if you need to after a point where you decide that whatever's being done, people don't think I'm counting it right by voice vote or something. You could then go to that route. Yeah, I mean, you have lots of options.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's gonna take away the hand count and the ballot, on a private ballot.
Right.
Now, however, I guess you can go back in history and really look, but if we ever, this was the first meeting that I've ever heard that there was a concern with anything. And then that takes into account that if there was a concern about it, that now we're essentially making an accusation, if that's the case, and then, and saying that somebody deliberately counted it wrong. And if we go back.
Well, it could have been an error. There could have been-
Absolutely.
I think, well,
Hold on. And if, you know, that being the case, that, again, we don't have, again, I've never heard of any concern ever before. So, however, taking the human error out of it is not a bad thing if it's financially feasible to do.
I find it interesting too that towns around us are also starting to you know, adopt this practice.
I don't see the need to have our own committee to research it any further. I mean, it hasn't been a big issue for us, to Jake's point, but it certainly is worth looking at what other committees' results are and then deciding if there's a cost value there that makes sense to us to use somebody else's equipment once we know what they're doing, essentially the legwork for us, and then we can decide once we know. But until that, they're not going to be done until the end of the summer, so there really isn't anything for us to do. I mean,
I think what I was getting at too was that it's not like this huge emergency that we have to make a decision tonight.
well, we don't have a meeting until November. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you on that. I think other towns have other needs for what they want to do. We need to look at what's going to work for us, and we need to talk about who's going to run the system if we go that way. It's not like you just bring it in and it does itself. Somebody has to run the system at the town meetings. So I think we do have to talk about it. Now, we can initially get some preliminary, like we can talk to Uxbridge. I'll be happy to contact them and say, hey, look, if we wanted to lease your system, what would you charge us? And we can at least get a cost from them. I can talk to the Upton committee. And, you know, there is things that we can do preliminarily, but we do have to do something. I don't think we can just wait for another town to say this is what we want to do and kind of piggyback on top of it.
Well, I think what Upton's committee is probably doing is researching the different systems, right, and costs. And if we can get that data from
and going to
Upton.
different meetings and then seeing what they, I mean, if we are already committed to not purchasing our own system, then really we have to wait and decide whose system we want to try to borrow, right, or make a deal
Right.
with. And then that, who runs it or how it gets set up or how we do it is dependent entirely upon what system other towns select. I mean, we can't figure out how many additional staffing people we need to have there at the meeting to run it if we don't know what they're going to buy. Or maybe they're going to come back and recommend nothing. I mean,
Could be.
that could be the case.
Right.
I mean, essentially, it's, other towns are looking at it, this is a town that's pretty close in size to us, you know, that we're used to sharing things with.
Yeah, the only difference is they've got $2 million in free cash, so $27,000 is a drop in the
I
bucket.
have a couple of questions. I got a couple of questions out in the audience here. So, Ellen, you had a question?
Kind of forgot what I was going to say. But I did have conversations with the Uxbridge clerk, and, you know, I definitely think that the purchase option or sharing with someone else is the way to go. We should not lease the system, very expensive.
Right.
As far as why we're doing it now, when I was elected, it was one of my to-dos while I'm in office is to get electronic voting. I know we don't have very large meetings, but a lot of towns are moving that way. It does not need to be done for the entire town meeting. And most towns love it that are doing it. I haven't heard anyone that doesn't love it. I've done a survey of town clerks, the ones that answered me anyway. There seems to be 3 different companies. Uxbridge is the only one that used a company that was different than anyone else. Speaking to the clerk today, she runs it herself.
She said, I asked her if there was any technology background she needed. She said, no, it's very simple. They have a young person that was good at IT in case there's a glitch, but she said she doesn't have any problems. It doesn't interfere with her duties at the town meeting, and she said she'd be glad to come here and show us a mini version of what it is. They have 1,000 units. I mean, if we entered into an agreement with them, and it probably would have to be spelled out, because I'm sure they don't want us losing their stuff. So anyway, it's something I would like to see go forward.
Great.
Tom?
Yeah, there's just one particular piece of data I'd like to see that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's the effect on turnout. We see town meetings, I mean, we're a town of 6,000 people. We're lucky if we get 100 people at a town meeting. Talking to people in town, some people don't go because they're afraid of raising their hand and having their neighbors know which way they're voting on a controversial vote. It'd be interesting to see if some towns have seen turnout go up from adopting this type of a system.
Or closer votes.
Or closer votes.
On that, at our last town meeting, we had 131 voters, and the biggest questionable question there, only 75, 80 voted. That means there's a lot of people on the floor that were afraid to vote, and this would take care of that, I think.
Or left.
Or left, correct, or left.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so you're just looking for approval to investigate more, or?
No, we just put it on the agenda so that it was discussed by the entire board, so that we would circumvent it.
Okay, but we're gonna need some sort of direction going forward, right? You're gonna look into it?
So I was gonna wait until Upton comes back in the end of summer with their results, and then we could talk about it again. I mean, and see what they come up with. I mean,
And I mean, essentially, direction from the moderator and the town clerk, meaning that, you know, they kind of are the owners of the meeting.
I think both of us are okay with it if the town wants to go forward with it. I don't have an issue
As
with
far
it.
as bringing the data that we would need.
Well, somebody's.
I continue to gather.
Yeah, I feel like you feel like you've actually done 99% of it.
right. And even, I mean, this isn't something we would do in November. It's something we do next May. So.
If we, yeah.
Or we can
Well-
have like a mini meeting and watch just to try it out.
But at the same time, if it's something we're interested in, we need to know the cost. Somebody's got to contact Uxbridge and say, hey, if we wanted to lease your system for a meeting, what would you charge us? So is that going to be Kim or me, or?
I'm also wondering if they spend $27,000 on 1,000 units, plus the software or PC, whatever it is that does the counting.
Some infrastructure wiring that has to
That's
get
the
put
whole
in as
thing.
well.
There was the infrastructure wiring that was done too. So, okay. Well, then that comes into account. Where do they have their town meetings in the same place every time? Because we will have to move venues on occasion. At least it happened before.
Those clicker systems that they use, those can be wireless based. You use them at
Okay. Again, we definitely need some more information.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we table this? Why don't you guys go and get some more information? We'll come back, we'll have a further discussion, and we'll determine at that point if we want to consider going forward with it or not. How's that? Okay.
Works for me.
All right, cool.
Before I leave, because I had also asked to talk about a 5-year plan. I see it's way down on your agenda. Do you think we can move it up, or do you not need me around for that?
But you don't want to stay here and enjoy all this?
As much as I have, it's, I mean, you guys, these meetings are as entertaining as town meetings.
I would say they're more so.
Strategic plan, is that the one?
Yeah. It was,
21, yeah.
Kim and I had a conversation about this, and I think all of you and Mark and I have talked about it a little bit as well.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've been thinking, that now I'm putting on my school hat. As you know, we had a very challenging fiscal year on the town side. We just met tonight on the school side to talk about the cuts that we have to make our budget work for this year. I really think if we're going to get support for the town and the schools going forward, school's got a 5-year plan already. We know where we want to get to in 5 years. Whether we can get there depends obviously on funding and other things. I think the town needs to have that same kind of approach. I think we need to look at where we want to be as a town 5 years from now, and then work backwards on the steps we're going to take to get us there. And obviously, again, it depends on funding. We may come up with a great plan and then say, well, there's no money to do it.
But until we have a plan, we can't even get the money, I don't think, because voters aren't just gonna say, sure, do what you want. And I don't feel like we as a town plan very far ahead.
So I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna say 100%, I totally agree with you. We've talked about this before. Our master planning committee is totally dissolved right now. We need qualified candidates to come up that can drive that plan. They have to work, in my opinion, in concert with the Economic Development Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, the Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator's Office, you know, all the above. Everybody has to be working together on this. We just don't have the resources to move forward with this.
Well, that's true. I agree with you about, we have a plan. A lot of people spend a lot of time working on a master plan for many years, and that still exists, and that committee still exists. It's just, I mean, it's not completed, right? And that's based upon surveys that were sent out to the community. We have an idea what the public wants. All of that is great and valid and true. And we've spent the 5 years that I've been here, we've been focused on the same priorities moving forward. I think the board's vision has been the same, economic development and growth in the same parcels we try to develop, and reestablishing things that are Mendon priorities, right? And we've done a good job of that. The issue really is now about funding. We have $800,000 left in stabilization and $250,000 in CapEx. And we're facing potentially a crisis next year with the school. So, I mean, if you want us to plan, and we do, a real great place to start would be to get some doomsday scenario numbers from the school right now about what next year looks like, so that we can start working with departments here to strategize how the town survives just next year. That's,
Well,
we can have a map, a plan about what we want to do, and we know what those things are. We want to expand the senior center, we want to develop the corner of 16, we want to attract them, we want to do all of those things. We want to sell Morrison Drive, we want to have infrastructure at the intersection. I mean, everybody knows what these things are, right?
But it's more than just capital stuff and infrastructure stuff. It's operational stuff too. It's staffing throughout all the departments. I mean,
but this, realistically, we're looking at staffing reductions. We were potentially looking at them this year.
and we are doing them this year at the school, I can tell you
So,
now.
I mean, that's,
Listen,
I'd rather spend time, at least for this next year, focusing on what happens next year, get the override passed, and then plan. But we can start the process now.
well, I agree with everything that you said, Kim, but I also said we got to get out of the mode of reactiveness. Now, we spent the last 5 years working our tails off to retool. And we've done an exceptional job, right? We retooled the fire department, we retooled the police department. We climbed out of a wicked hole that we were in by, being really strategic. But we've never rolled in the master plan. We now have an economic development committee that's starting to gain some momentum, which is good. We have a capital planning committee, which we never had, and now we have. But if that doesn't roll into a master plan and we don't start prioritizing, we're going to be constantly reacting. And I think that's the point that you're making.
Well, yeah, I don't want to just address the schools next year. As much as it's going to help me in my position at the school, it's more than just, okay, we'll solve the schools problem next year, and then the year after that we'll solve this problem. I think we really need to think of where we're going to be 3, 4, 5 years from now. Do we want to expand the library? Do we want to expand park services? Does Allen need money to fix the roads? I mean, when you talk about capital, we know all that stuff is a given.
All of that stuff.
One at a time.
That is, yes.
One at a time. One at a time, please.
The answer to all of those questions is yes. What you're asking is, how do we prioritize what comes next on the list if money becomes available? And the problem is, again, it's hypothetical because there is no money available. We just spent $6.4 million next door building a police station that took over 10 years to get. So, I mean, I'm all for it.
Look, we could, sorry to interrupt you, but I get the value in a long-term plan. I mean, any organization should have a strategic plan that they can say, here it is. And should we do that? Probably put it on paper and have something that we look back at, like we did a long-range financial planning committee at one point, right?
Yes.
So maybe even starting by looking at that and seeing what those recommendations were and ensuring that we are adhering to some of those and tweaking those. But the bottom line is we can come up with operational needs and what we want to do. It's not going to happen. We've been doing the same, I've seen the same list since I've been selectman almost for 6 years.
Best laid plan, was it best laid plans of mice and men? But, you know, it's, I think what is being said here, and I believe in it with any organization, is that once you've set your priorities, things change. We recognize that things change, economies change, structures change, etc. However, it's a best foot forward approach of a plan that we can march towards and trying to prioritize our needs within the community. And as things pop up, then that helps our discussions when we're sitting there looking at that and we're reacting to other things, is really, I think, is what's being said. My big concern is the heavy lifting that goes into that, is getting the right people that are willing to step up and commit their time and trying to develop that kind of plan. I mean, I've been on this board now, this is my 4th year, actually going on my 5th year, and we haven't talked about the master plan once. Not once since I've been on it. We've just been constantly retooling and knowing what we need to do, but we've now accomplished a lot of our goals, and now we're at a point where we can move on and start really setting a solid foundation for the future of what we want to see done. And then how do we get there? We don't know how we're going to get there until we talk about it. You know, so anyways, that's my opinion.
I mean, if I could use the school as an example, when Dr. Maruschek first got started, we put together a 5-year plan that we completed about a year ago. We probably accomplished 95% of that stuff, and that was a big driver in getting that override 5 years ago. Without that, I don't think we ever get that. We have another plan for the next 5 years, and some of that's being postponed this year because now we're making cuts this year as opposed to adding money because that's the finances. But we have a goal of where we went, and we put together a committee of community people and teachers and parents and, you know, a lot of people. There was probably 25 people involved. We met over a 6 or 7 month period with a facilitator. We now have another plan to go forward. Will we accomplish it all? I don't know if we will or not, but if we go for an override for the schools next year, that's going to be the driver, is this is what everybody said they wanted the school district to be. This is what it's going to take to get there. If they say no, then they say no. But I guess I think that the town needs to take that similar approach, because the town needs money just like the schools do. It's not just us. I know everybody thinks we just suck the money away, but you're not going to get money to do stuff if they don't know what it is you're really trying to get to.
So you're saying basically we should, if we have a strategic plan, we can ask the voters for an override to accomplish some of the goals in the strategic, which I wouldn't support, so.
You got to give people a reason to support spending more money. Otherwise, they're not going to do it.
I get it, but I'm not going to ask for an operational override. I wouldn't.
Well, I wouldn't be in support of an operational override either, unless, you know, there was some really driving force of it. But
I just want to. So this has been done. It was done. That's what the master plan existed for. This has been done by committee. People from the community spent their time dedicated, creating the document. That's done. What hasn't been done is that document come to the board, and then the board prioritize the priorities that you want to do. That's a goal-setting session of this board. That is not a group, a committee formed. The community already did their part.
All right, so why don't we just start with what we have and let's see where that is, and we can make a decision from there.
That's fine.
Correct. I mean, I don't want to see anybody else volunteer their time and then get frustrated because we can't follow through on the thing.
Why don't we start there?
So much time.
I'm sorry, don't worry. We'll start there. I saw a question on the audience.
Yep. I was going to say, isn't a lot of this stuff with the master plan currently being worked on at CMRPC? And do we have a progress report from them of any kind on how it's coming along? I know that we discussed it in the Economic Development Committee, but other boards kind of took it over for us. But from what I gathered, it's very close to being done or has been finished. And CMRPC, I know we've been paying them to work on this, so.
Well, really, the question is for the planning board as to where it is. I mean, that mostly lies with.
There's a lot of moving pieces in it, and to the point that I heard earlier, and I think Kim, you bring up a really good point, is we haven't had an opportunity as a board, at least since I've been on the board, to even look at it and dust it off. And priorities change every single year. All right, so we may be close to wrapping that up on a lot of our goals that we set forth, but that doesn't mean we're not gonna have future goals either, right? And things aren't gonna change, right?
Thank you. Kristen O'Clair, 2 Millville Street. It sounds like you already have CMRPC involved as far as the master plan process goes. What the master plan process is for communities, and this is throughout the Commonwealth, specifically with that agency, is it takes input from the community, right? And you've already gone through all of that, where you've probably had study groups, surveys, things that go out. What the finalized master plan does is identifies areas of opportunity within the community. It really pushes for municipal government to partner with the assets that you already have in the community, and it really identifies those things so that you can get some of these, it identifies low, medium, and high-hanging fruits, so that you can say, all right, as a town, we are in this financial budgetary crisis, that we have these things that we have to 100% address, and we don't have money for a whole new capital items budget. But we have this agency, this developer, this person that we can partner with as a community and take care of X, Y, or Z. And it really takes a lot of those things into consideration. So when you're talking about this master plan and you're talking about what impact it could have on the community, don't look at it, specifically as, oh, this is an investment, this is a monetary investment, and this is something that we're going to have to make, because it isn't necessarily all of that. It could just be, maybe this year we're taking on these 3 aspects of the master plan. We're taking these 3 low-hanging fruits and this one high-hanging fruit that we can take steps towards the future to actually, accomplishing some of these things. I think it's really important to at least understand that that is a part of it, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be this super high budgetary item that you're going to be passing. That's all.
I don't know how much more, thank you very much, and point taken. I'm not sure how much more we have to discuss this.
I'm good, no.
So.
I think we should get it and review it and make the next step from there.
Yeah. All right, so why don't we do that, Kim? Let's just put it on a future agenda, all right?
All right, thanks. It's been fun.
Thanks.
Thank you. Discussion with the store commission.
Donuts?
One for Kim and, oh yes.
I'll buy you rainbow colored highlighters.
You can each have your own cover.
Hey.
Good, how are you? Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
The Historical Commission wanted to talk to you this evening about the demolition delay bylaw and the difficulties that we're experiencing in making sure that the conditions of the bylaw are carried out. As you know, we've been concerned in recent years about the loss of many of the properties that are historic or have historic significance to the town. I'm sorry. The demolition delay bylaw was designed to try and work with owners of these properties to find a way to preserve our history while understanding that owners also have the right to do with their property as they will. The demolition delay bylaw is very clear and spells out the responsibilities of the owners, the commission, and the building inspector. Over the past year alone, we've had 4 instances where procedure has not been followed. In one instance, a demolition permit was issued without a delay, as the owner had promised the Commission an opportunity to enter the property and extensively photograph the building. He had also advised the Commission that a new structure, almost identical to the one being demolished, would be built on the land. Neither of these things happened. Unfortunately, one of the last remaining farmhouses in Mendon was taken down immediately, and a new subdivision is to be built on the property. The owner absolutely has the right to do this. However, one of the terms of issuing the demolition permit was not met. A second instance happened in March this year, similar to the last one. In this case, the owner was advised that the buildings were historically significant, being the only remaining cottages from the Lake Nipmuc Park years. The Commission wanted to find some way of working with the owner to try and preserve the properties, and initiated the 6-month demolition delay. The owner came to a meeting with his attorney and advised that the properties were to be demolished, the zoning was going to be changed, and was going to be sold to an interested party. After a period of 4 months into the 6-month delay, it became apparent that the Commission had no way of preserving the properties. The owner was advised that the building department would issue a demolition permit subject to the Commission being allowed into these buildings. Again, to do an extensive photographic record of these very significant homes. The Historical Society also expressed a desire for one of the front doors to be removed and placed in the museum. Neither of these things happened. The buildings were torn down despite the owner being asked to comply with the terms of the permit. We're currently involved in 2 additional demolition requests, one at 143 Hertford Avenue East, the other at 30 Misco Road. Both applicants came to an Historic Commission meeting where they were advised that both properties met all 4 criteria for determining the historical significance of a property. Neither of the applicants have responded to the letters sent confirming this and requesting they provide the required demolition plan to the Commission. Our fear is that both of these applicants will wait out the 6-month demolition delay period and then request an emergency demolition permit on the basis that the property is uninhabitable or dangerous, typical of a demolition by neglect scenario. Both these properties are and have been vacant for some time, neither having ever been occupied by the owner, and nothing has been done to either home to prevent worsening conditions. In fact, the property on Hertford Avenue East has been totally gutted. Any and all historic features of the property have been removed or destroyed, and the property was actually scheduled to be demolished without any town permitting at all. Fortunately, this was discovered before any work took place. The owner is actually in breach of the bylaw currently, as the building hasn't been properly secured as the bylaw states. Should the owner fail to secure the building or structure, a subsequent destruction of the building or structure or part thereof at any time during the 6-month demolition delay period, which destruction could have been prevented by the required security measures, shall be considered a violation of this bylaw. The property on Misco Road has just been left vacant for a period in excess of 2 years, with no attempts being made to maintain the building and allowing for mold to take hold of part of it. The owner was aware of a water issue in the basement that left unresolved. The owner was aware of a water issue in the basement that left unresolved would eventually lead to the destruction of the property. By the way, this home is the oldest home in Mendon. In both of these 2 cases, it would seem that the owners are attempting to circumvent the bylaw by neglecting the properties and creating a situation where the building inspector can issue a demolition permit on an emergency basis where he feels there is, according to the bylaw, imminent and substantial danger to the health or safety of the public due to the deteriorating conditions. The Historical Commission is working to amend the demolition delay bylaw for review at the next town meeting and to incorporate a blight and demolition by neglect addition. Everyone wants Mendon to grow and prosper. However, where controls on how that happens have been instituted by the town by means of a bylaw, those affected must be held accountable for their actions and realize that rules apply to everyone equally. That we cannot accept the notion of, and I quote, apologizing afterwards rather than asking permission, And as long as you make it look pretty, you can do anything you want in Mendon. We're looking to the Board of Selectmen to support the demolition delay bylaw and censure anyone not doing so.
So, if I remember correctly though, when it's just a simple, it's a town bylaw, not a zoning bylaw, correct?
Correct.
Are our powers that get limited with a general bylaw, correct? Is that true?
No.
No. Town law.
So what,
Town meeting is different. Town meeting for zoning is 2/3, town meeting amendment for regular is only a majority.
so what are the repercussions for somebody that doesn't, that's doing this?
$300 a day until the violation is, says any owner of the building or structure or part thereof demolished without first obtaining a demolition permit in accordance with the provisions of this bylaw shall be subject to a $300 per day fine. Each day the violation exists shall constitute a separate offense until the faithful restoration of the demolished building is completed to the satisfaction of the commission. Such fines may be imposed in accordance with the non-criminal disposition procedures set forth in MGL Chapter 40, Section 21D.
Okay, so did we
In addition,
charge them $300 a day and then they tell them to rebuild it?
no, in addition, there is also something in there that says should that building be taken down or in violation of the bylaw, that you can actually refuse a building permit for a period of up to 2 years. At which time they can then reapply and, subject to approval, they can then get a building permit or not.
Sounds like it's an enforcement issue as
Right, as opposed to a bylaw issue.
It's part of the bylaw, though. I mean, yeah,
existing bylaw.
yeah,
So basically, we need to start enforcing it.
exactly, yes.
So the question is, who is we? Who's the vessel to the enforcement?
So this says non-compliance, Section 7. The commission is authorized to carry out its duties and functions under this bylaw. The commission and/or the building inspector are each specifically authorized to institute any and all actions and proceedings in law or equity as they may deem necessary and appropriate to obtain compliance with the requirements of this bylaw or to prevent a threatened violation thereof. Sounds like the commission or the building inspector.
How much of this is new and how much of this is existing?
None of that's new, that's the
All
existing
existing
bylaw.
bylaw.
What we would be looking to do is actually, when it was put together, the whole issue of blight or demolition by neglect, it is in the state, but it's not actually within our bylaw. So what we would be proposing is actually to make additions to this, to actually give the bylaw some teeth and actually say that you cannot buy an historic home, especially, you know, somewhere that's on maybe 9 acres or something, with the intention of leaving it to rot for 10 years, knowing that it's an historic home, and then just tearing it down, in effect.
I feel like it's such a gray area. So, how do you force someone to fill the standard that I guess unless you can spell it specifically out? I mean, just neglect and leaving it is such a broad term that who's setting the bar of what is the neglect? Like, so maybe I like to live in mold. No, I'm not. I'm just being hypothetical. I'm trying to give an extreme case.
Yep.
Because I want to be able to understand this. Because we've demoed houses and we've let everybody in and we've done exactly what was asked of us and
There's a difference, though, with respect. You had a permit.
Absolutely.
Exactly. What we're saying here is that we have issues where people are actually planning to rip down homes with no permit at all, and then, oh, sorry, didn't realize that, I'll do it next time.
I agree. Well, then, I mean, again, then you should delay their permit, or either institute fines, delay their permits for 2 years, and they'll probably not forget the next time.
So,
It's not.
I understood, so I was tracking with you up until the point where we somewhat got derailed. So
Yes,
you're
sir.
trying to figure out,
Oh, I just want to be able to, if we're going to add this piece in about, and again, maybe it's just a matter of copying it down from the state, right, and saying this is what it is. Maybe there's already case law out there that supports this, I don't know. But my question is just how do you define what is the neglect? Some people, I know what I consider neglect, and I know what some people live in, right? And to me, so there has to be some sort of definition, or.
The town of Upton is, has is it a bylaw?
Yes, it's in the bylaw. Yep.
Very
Separate bylaw.
comprehensive. It's worth reading.
I understand, but it has never been tested, like, so.
This is the first I've seen this document, so I haven't even read the document.
Right, I mean, we can put anything we want down on paper,
Absolutely,
then
yeah.
it ends up getting tested and it doesn't work, right?
Well,
So-
I know there's several towns in the state that have a blight bylaw.
Has it been tested, is my question.
I assume since it's been on the books for a few years, it has been, and I think we can look. One of our jobs over the next few months is going to be looking at that and looking at something that works for Mendon. But the intent is, again, like we said, to prevent these structures from just being bought and
Left.
Yeah, that to me, and Cindy was going in the right direction, that's a compliance issue at this point.
Well, I
right?
mean, clearly they've already, whoever these.
Well, those
applicants
are
already
violations, but
violated.
what I'm saying is there's a compliance issue and an oversight issue.
It seems like there's a compliance issue, an oversight issue. Without having read this, I'm not quite sure how far you're going. You might be going a little far, and, I mean, you can't prevent someone from selling their properties.
No,
No,
and that's
no,
not
we're
the
not saying-
intention at all. But in order to, I mean, you have to go back to this and realize that this is somebody who wants to do something with their property, demolish the property.
Right.
Has to fill in that demolition application. That goes through a series of the boards in the town. It then comes to historic, and we're not in this business just saying, oh, you can't do anything, you can't do anything. We look at every property, and there's a lot of really old properties in town that really have no historical significance other than age.
Yes.
So
So
the issue is
that's
they go
not an
back to
issue.
the building commissioner, and they say, this is an emergency, and he says, okay, and gives them a permit.
That's what's been happening in some instances, yeah.
Well, it also becomes an authority having jurisdiction, right? So it's a compliance issue and it's an authority having jurisdiction. So, if, I'm just trying to sort this out,
No, yeah, that's
So
why we came.
if the zoning enforcement officer or the building inspector is the authority having jurisdiction and they go into a property and they deem it as being unsafe and he or she grants them the permit, the demo permit at that point, isn't, that individual is the authority having jurisdiction at that point.
According to the bylaw, if it is deemed historic, then they have to come to the Historic Commission. The building department has to come to the Historic Commission, and the chair, I guess, or the Historic Commission goes with the building inspector and inspects it. That's not happening.
Okay.
That's an
So,
internal.
okay, right, so now, all right, sorry, I was confused, I think.
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure out how to fix what the problem is, right? So the issue is, you have a bylaw that if enforced, actually could help you achieve the goal that you're trying to reach. The problem is, it's not being executed in the right way.
By anybody.
By anyone.
Right.
So, in the authority to go out to the sites, so you need, before the permit is issued, if it's historic, to have a representative from historic go with the building inspector to view the site. That's what your
Which I
request
believe is in the bylaw.
That's a specific situation, if it's an emergency demo.
Right.
Yeah.
I think there's
Okay,
just,
but-
there's sometimes
This-
is a serious breakdown in the communication
Okay,
that
but-
needs to happen.
A demo permit invokes this already.
Right.
It's very simple. Because I've been through the process a couple times, I think, right?
One or two.
Yeah, so it invokes it. I went to the meeting. We met. We went to the house together. They came in. They took pictures. They took stuff if they wanted it. So that's the proper way to go through the
Okay,
process.
so is the question, what happens if the process isn't followed?
Yes.
What do you
Correct.
do? So essentially, who sends the letter saying, in the fine letter, who don't do this anymore?
Correct.
That's and so,
That's the building
The
inspector.
fact that you don't know that you need a demo permit to demo your building, that's just an insult to everybody's intelligence in the community.
But it sounds like what I'm hearing is, in the situations where people know they need one and come in and get it, that most of the time it works fairly well. But the issue is when people try to get around it by holding on to the property, and then go to the building department or the building inspector or whoever and say, emergency, tear it down. And it seems to me that if you've got a process in place that requires, before the building inspector make that determination, that someone from your committee go with him, then he can make his decision as quickly as he needs to, and you can get your pictures and information.
Right. Yep.
And if you've already got that in the bylaw, that to me is an enforcement issue. And a communication issue, like you said.
And I think also at the point when somebody comes in to pick up a demolition application, they should be given a copy of the bylaw and be made very clear, especially if it's an historic home. If it's a 1960s house, unless it's got some kind of architectural significance or something like that, or there is a reason, you know, it doesn't even affect, really, the Historical Commission at all. We're just going to, it's only where we're losing these houses. This house on Misco Road, oldest house in Mendon, and it's just being left to rot. And I'm sure the other people that live on Misco Road aren't happy.
You can stop that.
Right, that's the other part.
Yeah, because no one's seeking to demolish it.
Right, that's
He is seeking to demolish it.
I think that's what needs to get researched.
That
The idea of the blight bylaw aspect of it is to look at what point do the characteristics of said property degrade to the point that it could be considered a demolition.
Yeah.
The characteristics make it unique and historically significant. I mean, that's what we'll be looking at. But again, when the when the bylaw itself that we have in place right now isn't being followed and nothing's being done about it not being followed, then we can add on as much as we want to this bylaw. It's not going to do any good.
I'm hearing two conversations, though. I'm hearing a current situation that a process isn't being followed that needs to be followed. We have to fix that. So Ken, we have to come up with some sort of memorandum or I don't know how to fix that problem. That problem is
simple. I mean, the problem is if a person does a thing without a permit, and then we have to then enforce. We have to find out when it gets reported, and then send them a letter, and then start fining them or call them in or whatever the process. I mean, that doesn't say in here what the actual process is, but
the second piece of it is you know, really what it comes down to is what's being implied here is that people are using a strategy in order to accomplish a goal.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, and,
Well,
and
I mean,
that's
but
where
I
I'm
think-
struggling.
But I think when you look at the emergency demolition,
You know what I'm saying?
an emergency demolition is for when there's an imminent and substantial danger to the health and safety of the public. So like,
Yeah, right. That's
okay, well,
Well, I mean, that means that, all right, if it's private property and it's in a house that's decrepit and falling down, right? We have those throughout town, right? That there's just abandoned homes or whatever they might be. So those being considered for that being an emergency, but it's not an emergency, it has to happen that day.
the only one I could think of that may be considered emergency was when the Cox house was like, you know, really in a bad state.
I see all kinds
That-
of.
If someone applied for a demolition permit for that, that could be considered the Cox house on George Street before, way back.
Yep.
I mean, that could have been considered an emergency, but I can't think of a house like that.
But again, but it had, when it says health and safety of the public, I mean, that means that it's private property, it should be on it anyway.
You're right. So I see very limited opportunity to utilize that aspect of
I'm
the
gonna
bylaw.
allow two questions on the audience, and then I'm probably gonna stop the conversation, to be honest with you, because I don't think there's much we can do about it today, except we have to talk about how do we get things into compliance. So Mrs. Byer, and then I'll go to Mrs. Lowell.
Yeah, my question is, once a demolition delay has been issued, at that does the building inspector, why does the building inspector have any right to act in an emergency? Because that has been what has happened in the past. And I think maybe Jane was going to maybe say something about that. But you know what I mean? Like, once there's a process, the person comes, they apply for this permit, and they have to wait six months.
No, 6 months is the maximum allowable
Okay,
time.
up to
Yeah,
6
up to 6
months,
months,
but
yeah.
they don't want to do that. And I think you said it earlier, they decide that there's some emergency, and they go to the building inspector and get an emergency permit, and the building comes down. So what can be done to stop that? To me, once the demolition delay has been given, then it should stay with the historic commission. The buildings.
I think the point, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, circumstances can change, so just because there's been a demolition delay for 6 months, something could happen in that 6
Absolutely.
months that would require or need
Sure, the
the
roof could
building
collapse,
inspection
absolutely.
to come in. I really do think these issues are a matter of getting everyone involved in the process, sitting down and talking and figuring out how you can really work together, you know, talk to the building inspector, talk about how you can help him help you, and vice versa, and get some enforcement. I mean, I think that's...
Already broken, I think they just need to be done.
Mrs. Lowell?
Jane Lowell, 40 Millville Street. I think using the Cox House as an example, although that back was ripped off, part of the back was ripped off, as you would know, and the L was structurally unsound. If you went into the basement, that house was as structurally sound as you possibly be. There was about this much of the sill on the Hopedale side that was not good. The cell was dry, everything was fine, the roof line was straight. So I think it depends on, I think that if the building inspector thinks perhaps that the building should come down, although in this instance he did not, that the commission should be involved as well, because you don't need to be a rocket science to go in and say the sills are okay, the roof line is straight, the trusses in the ceiling are okay. So I think it's more than just somebody glancing at the building and saying it's in poor shape.
Well, it says the building inspector shall make every effort to inform the chairperson of the commission of his intention to allow demolition before a permit is issued.
Okay, I just want to say one thing, going off of the Cox House, about what the purpose of the 6 months is. I think the purpose of the 6 months isn't, we're not going around trying to stop progress in Mendon. What we're trying to do is work with developers and property owners to try to find an alternative that fits with the character of Mendon to demolition. So this isn't, the 6 month delay isn't supposed to be a punishment. And I feel like it's looked at like that. The 6 month delay is to say, look, let's all sit at the table, find another solution, like happened with the Cox House. That house, I mean, many people looked at it as a house that was far past the ability to turn it into anything really nice, and Peter Coffin did a great job rebuilding it.
That's a prime example of the system working.
Yes. Right, exactly.
All right. So, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's a prime example of something working. There's 3 parties to this. There's the building inspector, there's the commission, and there's the owner. And the bottom line, what I hear tonight is that everybody needs to be working collaboratively to make sure that we're adhering to the rules that are in place. That's what you're asking for. That's what you guys are demanding. I totally get it. If that's not happening, based off of the examples you used, I suggest we send a letter to the building inspector, you know, or you guys talk with them, and we set rules in place right now to say we have to follow it. If we have to put a routing slip in place, we'll put a routing slip in place. I don't know. I don't know all the process, right? But what I'm saying is that there has to be something that dots the i's, crosses the t's. Yeah. Ultimately, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, the building inspector is the authority having jurisdiction. All right, so you may not have to agree with him.
No,
but he is the authority. Correct me if I'm wrong. All right, so
jurisdiction over what?
Over demolishing of what is a safe building or what is needs to come down. That's by state law.
Yeah, quick.
How many emergency permits have been granted? Do we know?
I don't know.
Any?
I have no idea.
At least one.
I know there was at
Yeah,
least
so
one, yeah.
at least one.
There was the old barn.
Lonnie, that's just what I was about to ask too, because usually if it's an emergency, we get involved with it. The old emergency, the past 3 years since I've been chief, and when I was lieutenant before, has been Flanagan's house, and it was half burnt down, so of course,
So
they
what would-
demolished that, but beyond that, we have a house on Park Street that we call him to, that the roof is collapsing, and I think it's a safety hazard, and he still hasn't said demolish that, so I don't know what buildings we're talking about.
We've not received any paperwork on that.
Hold on, everybody.
One at a time.
Somebody was, from the committee was gonna say something about them.
The town barn was demolished.
That was-
That was when Tom
Listen.
That was before the, okay, hold on. The town barn was before this bylaw, I believe, right? Didn't we all put this bylaw together?
I think the bylaw came together after that,
And
yeah.
I think it was part of the process.
We're not
That-
looking
that was
backwards,
ages-
let's just
that
look
was ages
forwards.
ago.
No,
I'm
it's the
sorry, it
same
was
with this
just-
too.
Yeah.
You
honestly.
asked and I didn't put the
Yeah.
clock together.
I mean, I think it's the same with the 4 examples that I gave you.
Yeah.
They're pretty much done. I mean, one is like completely gutted, one is already down, one is now got mold in it because it's just been left to sit, and then the other one, again, is down. So I'm not looking back. There's no point in writing to these people now and saying, hey, listen, you broke the bylaw, whatever. It's done. What we're looking for is support going forward. You guys appointed us.
Yeah.
We're looking
And we
for support.
appoint the building inspector, so.
Well, there you go. So what we're looking is support going forward to say, let's stop this now while we still have, 10 historic homes left in town. Because if we don't, we're not going to have any.
Just in the essence of time, I'll circle back with them to get more clear details. Only because I want to understand it a little bit more, because I know I follow
Yeah.
rules. I think I do.
Yep.
So I want to make
You're
sure.
such a good boy.
Not all the rules, but.
We'll find out which ones you didn't.
So I just want to make sure that,
Yep.
that you guys get the help that you need to make sure that it's working.
That's what we're looking
Great.
for.
All right, we'll start there. All right.
Thank you very much.
Also, I think we need to have Tim come in here and talk about this as a group, because
Yeah. I
Would
was,
be-
just that was
sense.
what I was gonna say. I was actually sending an email that I think like a working meeting maybe with all the
Yeah.
parties to work on this would be a really good idea.
Okay.
Or not even the
That's
full
fair.
board, a representative of the
Yeah.
board.
a whole board would be good.
That was great.
Okay, we can talk about it.
Thank you.
We'll see if we
Thank
put it
you.
on for next meeting.
Thanks.
We'll see if we put it on for next meeting. Thank you. Consider marijuana host agreement. Oh, it's commercial work.
I move to enter, wait a minute, are we, we're not doing that.
What do you mean? We're not doing it.
Are we- It says I move to enter into a marijuana host agreement between the town of Mendon and Green Era LLC. No.
We don't have a host agreement.
We do, but we need
Well,
to.
we have to vet
still
through.
Send
Okay,
it
so
through to them.
post last meeting, you had a meeting, you met with Cindy, and then, we've been reviewing a draft, we met with the necessary stakeholders, both chiefs and I. We reviewed the agreement, and we have a couple of suggestions for what we should be recommending while negotiating with the potential. The agreement is exactly the same as when you reviewed it for the last meeting. There are only I only had 2 issues. One is in regards to public safety, and we can talk about that. Dave, come up and talk about it. And the other one was just on a clause that I didn't think was legal, but Cindy can talk about that. So obviously.
Just one copy?
No, there's 3. I'm just holding them.
No, this is one.
Yeah,
This-
that's one. Here, here's the ones. So their, the main issue, concern, right, was public safety, right? So, Chief Kessler has provided an email. He is currently on vacation. He has no issues with the current agreement as reviewed. He has no actual recommendations or changes related to the document. He's good with it as is. And then we had a conversation with Cindy and I about what's typical in other host agreements, and then what the chief would prefer to have in this agreement so that he feels comfortable. And the recommendation is that the chief has authority to decide the level of staffing, so to put a person there to control traffic and crowd control at his discretion during operating hours during the life of the agreement. So that's it. That's the only changes from the last time.
I didn't read it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready to act on it tonight, but.
Well, but the bottom line is we have to go back and forth, right? So to send this back and say, is there something that they don't like or they're not going to agree to, right?
We have to get started on negotiating the terms.
Of course.
there
Yeah,
are-
but I need to get caught back up on this, and I want to go through because I might not be certain that I want to add something into this, you know, so, right? So, and same with our new board member here, I know that we want to get it done, but
I know I had sent you all some samples of other ones that I thought were pretty good in the past. And I do think that this draft that we received from, I can't remember the name.
that's what you said, I remember.
That was pretty good agreement, and that what I'm seeing in other cities and towns where I'm working and where other people are working at our firm, and in just other examples on available to look at in general, there's not a whole lot of disparity between them anymore. There's not a whole lot of room to get more.
Can you send me an electronic?
Everyone's getting 3% sales.
It's becoming very standardized.
They are. They're becoming very
So-
standardized.
I can ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So you're talking about there's the 2 3%, right? There's the standard 3%, then there's that other 3% for 5 years?
There's the community, you can get up to 3% for community costs, okay, to try to offset the cost to the community because of the nature of the business. Okay, and then there's the sales tax, which is different.
Is that 3%?
Sales tax is 3%.
Okay.
But the sales tax is separate from.
Yeah, right. And does that go to the state or the town?
Cities.
Stays here?
Yep.
The sales?
Local option tax.
And then, so what do we have for impacts that in the other 3%? Like that's it, we have to put that together, correct, to send back to them?
Oftentimes, it's becoming routine that 3% is pretty much covering all the local costs or impacts, unless there's something unique or different. One thing that there still seems to be some room in, sometimes it's agreed to, sometimes it's not. I have seen police details, or at least, some discretion for the police chief to have authority to require them to pay for one during certain times, or to at least to give him some discretion in imposing an officer and then paying that cost. And I've also seen, maybe traffic considerations, or, someone to control traffic flow.
So that if we require them to have, so say we just said 3%, right?
That's what's generally, and
Right,
most
and
people
I
are
did
going
a
along with
little
it.
bit of research on it, finding out that the state's not enforcing it, so we're kind of just getting away with it. However,
Pretty much.
I also don't agree with it, right? So I'm going to argue it a little bit. I'm not going to stand up on top of the roof and scream from the hills about it, but I will pose my concerns. So if we're going to say a 3% number, and then the chief decides that they need a detail down there on Saturday mornings because it's the busiest time, is that detail now covered in that 3%, or are we going to send them a bill like we would for any other business that incurs road work that needs a detail, a nightclub that needs a detail?
That's something to be negotiated.
Right, that's
That
why-
hasn't been agreed to by anyone, that's
Right
something
now,
to
the
negotiate.
proposal would be that they provide whatever the monetary value is for whatever he deems necessary to staff. That's our starting point, which is, we think, without knowing what the volume of sales or traffic is gonna be in that location, it's unknown at this point. So obviously, we would want to negotiate to have an officer there every time they open the doors. And so whatever the cost of that is, they would be responsible for, and that's separate from the 3%.
Realistically, they may or may not agree to that.
Right, but that's where we're starting.
Right, and you may find that, realistically, even if they agree to it, on a Monday morning, you're not gonna need that detail. On a Saturday, you definitely want that detail from 11 to 7, or whatever, so to give the chief the flexibility to determine what he needs to protect his community is one thing that municipalities can negotiate.
So again, herein lies my argument. We have that ability now. We impose it on nightclubs, we impose it on road work, we already do this. So for us to just say,
What's
Yeah,
your authority for road work or?
well, if they're doing road work, we have to have a detail on the road.
That's because there's a state law in place that says when you have,
Sure.
when you do, but there
But,
is
okay,
nothing
but
that
there's a nightclub
requires-
up the street that we record, is that, they do that on their own? Is that a voluntary item?
It's been pretty voluntary. I mean, the board at one time, maybe back when you were in the beginning, you guys imposed it because of the problems that were happening there on Saturday nights.
Yep.
So it's just Saturday nights.
But that's another situation, and I've seen that happen in towns too, where you want your alcohol license or your entertainment license to do
You
this.
tie it to it.
know that it's a congested area, Saturday night's the problem, this is a condition of your permit.
Which is fair enough, again, they get
But
billed.
this, the host agreement is really where you have a chance to weigh in,
Mhm.
because it's the
Exactly.
state that's gonna actually
Exactly.
grant the license. This is
Sid.
where you have the ability to weigh in.
I guess
Without-
all
without
I'm
this, there
asking-
is no ability.
I guess all I'm asking is, let's just be reasonable on what we ask a business that's coming into town, regardless if you like the business or not, what we're gonna force them to pay us. And not just say 3% across the board because the state's not paying attention, or they don't have the resources to pay attention. If it's $1,000, tell them it's $1,000, but not, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that don't beat up a business, and I'm not arguing, I'm not yelling at anybody, I'm sorry. I just don't want to, just because, I don't want to do it just because you can.
And that's why, sorry, Mark, that's why I like the idea of having the chief have discretion over the staffing rather than saying a set value, because you could say it's $20,000, but that may be way too much, and maybe it's
Yeah, we don't-
10, maybe
Maybe
it's
it's not
10
enough.
in the first year.
That's right.
Right, but it drops off eventually, so that way we're not over
Absolutely.
taxing.
Cool,
or-
that's how I feel.
So
Without putting this in the agreement, I have no authority to determine that,
Right.
like we do with road work or the alcohol details.
all right, wait,
Listen,
so,
everybody, I want everybody to talk one at a time, because we're shouting in multiple
I'm
directions.
done.
All right.
the agreement as we have it in front of us does not say a percentage will be given to the town to pay for the costs. It's specifically makes it more of, if you need a detail, you're gonna pay for the detail type of thing, at the discretion of the chief.
Right.
Well, that, I like that better.
Yeah, cool, that's great.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Which is, okay.
Mrs. Barr?
Isn't there a difference between the 3% and the so-called impact?
Well, there's a 3% local tax, sales tax. Then there's a potential opportunity to go 3% for
Up to 3%.
impact costs, impact fees.
Okay, but if you wanted to, you could require them to, I mean, we want to get enough money to cover the police, I understand it, if all of a sudden it turns out to be some fiasco. But don't you want to put it on them that they have to hire their own police detail?
Yeah, that's what we're,
That's what we're talking about.
that's what we're,
Outside of the 3%?
It is.
That's what we're
Oh,
talking
okay.
about.
And traffic, you know, in other towns, they were busing them in from a central location.
So for clarification, the language right now says the company agrees to provide paid police coverage for the purposes of traffic and crowd management during hours of operation as deemed necessary by the chief of police.
Above and beyond the 3%.
Yeah, that's separate. So, I mean, that could
So that
initially be
doesn't
2 officers, it could trickle down to, I mean, that's.
And that's an
100%.
impact fee, so that's separate, that doesn't even touch the 3% yet, so we don't even have an item in the line.
And then if it becomes unnecessary, it's.
Absolutely, and again, the discretion, I think that's,
Yeah.
And let's just say, this is what we're putting in
Right.
from our negotiating place.
So-
We
so-
have not, they have not seen 3% impact fee and cost of police officer.
So in all fairness, and also in the fairness of time, we have a new board member. I want him to have an opportunity to vet this through. I'll vet it through again to see where we landed completely with a few changes. We can bring this up in the next meeting, and then we can agree to move forward with it.
Do we have a time limit on how long? First of all, my question is, we're required to adopt a host agreement, correct?
You are, yes, you need to. how long
so
is-
just so you know, we're holding up a business's
Yeah, I'm with you.
livelihood here. Like, this has been going on since March.
we've had this since March.
We've been starting this discussion.
What is our
We
time
haven't
limit?
had the host agreement since March.
No, but we got this last April, right?
We've looked at it once.
Right, so we get, like, we
We've
gotta get
looked at it
going, and
once.
we have council
Well,
working,
I
and
can tell you,
there-
I looked at it and I sent you examples, and I can tell you, in my experience, you can look at it and send me your comments and your thoughts. You can look at it independently, each of you.
Right.
And pick up the phone and ask me your questions. You don't have to wait to have a meeting to move this forward. And
That's right.
I can say, in my experience, you're on the longer end of negotiating a host agreement. But on the other hand, I haven't heard anyone picking up the phone saying,
oh no, I've heard
what do we do
from,
because the applicant is.
the applicant has contacted me multiple
Right,
times.
and he's calling me down too, but.
Okay, can I ask a quick question? What if we, so this is the draft that we drew up, or that they sent over?
They sent over this initially, right? and
Did
you
we make
went
any
through.
adjustments to it so far?
I did make some
Yep.
changes to it.
Okay, so, I'm assuming it's just like any other legal lawyers sending stuff back and forth together. You put your words in it, you'll send it back to them, they'll say, no, we don't like it, do you want to send it back? Is there any reason that we shouldn't send it over this, whatever your changes are now, with the caveat that we may have more changes?
That's a decision for the board to make.
As long as we have that agreement that there might be something else that we want to put into it, then we can start negotiating with them.
Right, because I'd like to know within the next,
Just to make
if
us-
we don't meet
Yeah.
for another month. I mean, that
Yeah.
if they're agreeable, if 3% is pretty standard, let's assume that's common, but the police thing may need a little more time to hash out. I'd like to be having those conversations so that when we meet again, we're at a point where we can actually sign or move forward.
Right, that's my thing is at least get them something, and we can say there could be additions, but this is where we are, so
That's
that
my
at least
biggest fear
shows.
is that they wouldn't allow the additions, that's the only fear.
Well, right, and we should have that discussion sooner rather than later. And that way, it shows that we're actually doing something, because I think they're like, well.
Hey,
this-
listen,
what's
I want to
going
get this thing done. I definitely want to get this thing done. This thing's been sitting around for a while, I agree.
I mean, this is one of those situations where the town has said it's a yes community. This is the requirement of getting the yes community operations up and running.
Mhm.
There's someone who wants to run a business in a yes community. He's picked your community for whatever reason. He could go to other communities, and he has an obligation to jump through some hoops also. One of them is to negotiate a host agreement with the city or town. He can't go forward without doing that, and there's no reason that I can see why you have to do all of your thinking together in a group. I mean, I have no problem with taking edits from each of you and looking at them and saying, okay, well, we've already said this here, okay, I can put that in, let's see what they says, and, or appoint one of you to sit down with me, or let Kim sit down with me and the applicant, based on all the input we get, and negotiate something with them and their.
I have no problem moving this forward, as long as we can insert things as we start negotiating.
I believe you can, but
Or take things out,
absolutely
for
You
that
can,
matter.
and you can take things out, but I think the universe of what you are looking at getting is pretty much at its max.
Right, but this is a reason.
But I'm perfectly happy to see what other items the board may want to put in there. I mean, I've seen people put in.
Or take out.
Community service, community education hours.
Or take
Or
out, though.
take out. I mean, that's fine too, but really, that's your decisions at this point, but.
So why don't we do that?
What is in here is fairly reasonable and fairly standard, and we've tried to take the most of everything, but adding and subtracting, it's not a done deal till it's signed by everybody.
Okay. Then if we can do that, then I'm fine with it. With moving it forward.
So we'll start.
All right?
Cool. I'm okay.
All right?
Thanks.
You don't need a motion on that or anything, right?
No.
All right.
So, well, maybe.
For what?
Well,
To
that's
send
what I'm
over-
wondering.
No, I would say, to send over changes, I don't think so.
No, you're already negotiating.
No, so we're negotiating, but I see a motion sitting here in front of me, which confused the heck out of me tonight, so that's why.
See, you just sweat.
Yeah.
Motion to sign the host agreement?
No, it
So
wasn't, no, it
moved.
wasn't, it
All
wasn't.
in
Nice try.
Well, they've been communicating with Mark. They recently started
Bless you.
working. I don't know if there's an attorney that's representing them. Who should
Um,
we be
Talked to Jack, who had
directly?
been on an email with you. He's the one, or he's connected with you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why don't you talk?
because I said,
to
please
him,
just
make sure
call
he has this
Kim.
draft,
Okay,
find out if he's represented by council,
okay.
and
I
then
would hope so.
Yeah, they do.
give them my contact
He
information.
isn't, he's gonna be now.
And if he doesn't, still give him my contact information.
Okay.
And then go from there.
All right.
Great.
Because if, you know, until we know whether he's represented or not, I really shouldn't be
Right.
interfacing with
But
him.
I don't, well, maybe.
Thanks, chief.
Okay. What's next?
Consider electricity aggregation plan.
Well, I was just gonna wait and look through quick and see if there was something else. So, we need to sign, a new agreement with the same, the aggregation company as before. Because we chose not to continue, there's a great gap, so this is just signing back up with Colonial.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is just to move, continue an agreement with them.
Is it for the solar panels?
No, this is for when we did, so Colonial is the company that does the aggregation, so it was when we bought energy in bulk on behalf of the community. So we've been looking at it again, Ant's been working with them to try to get some more green types of energies to be considered, but we don't have an actual agreement in place with them right now because we didn't opt into the last purchase, so we need to re-sign it in order to.
But this is not to, this is just to say we're still working with you.
Exactly, to use them again. We get to decide when we go back out again for it, and whether or not we choose to opt in or not. Those numbers come back to the board.
Okay, so I'll take a motion.
I move to sign the consultant agreement for management of the town's municipal aggregation program and energy-related services with Colonial Power Group.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, consider lease agreement for new ambulance.
I move to enter into a lease agreement for the purchase of a 2019 wheeled coach 1170F Class 1 Type 1 ambulance. The lease term is for 5 years at 3.45%. The total cost is $209,920.
Second.
Discussion on this.
Town meeting authorized the purchase lease of an ambulance. Funds to the tune of, I don't have the email right in front of me, but initial down payment's gonna be made, and then the actual lease payment, which I believe is $41,000 and change, will be made in July. This pays for the first year of the agreement.
42.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Exciting news. Consider Chapter 90 request for Blackstone Street. Alan, you want to come up?
I move to approve the Chapter 90 request for Blackstone Street in the amount of $193,521.
Second.
Hey, Alan.
What's the amount?
193,521.
Is that up? I have 262 on my paperwork. Make sure it's right. 193. It's 193, 262, or 25, or.
I had 193,521.
521 is what I have on the motion.
I think this is all you.
That was, I didn't bring a copy with me.
But this is what you sent us, right? So it should be the number of what you sent us?
Yeah, the number of the.
Number 19 here, let's see.
So it should be 193, 262, 22.
This is 521 must have come from the, okay, let's see. I think there's a 521 up at the top, but then the, so let's redo the motion, or amend the motion to be $193,262.22.
Yep, second.
Okay. Anything else on that? No?
So what is it? So this is just to pave part of Blackstone?
It's 4,000 feet going from, before where the old Mike's Motor Workshop is, over 1,000 feet in, whatever direction that is.
Towards Blackstone or
Towards Blackstone. Basically the Myron Stones.
So you just...
It's the worst part of the road.
Yeah, right.
It's the worst, absolute worst part.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. And discuss snow and ice deficit. Kim?
So the board needs to vote to authorize snow and ice deficit this year. Vote wasn't brought before the board. During the winter, we had limited meetings, so it made it difficult to do. During the budget process, I heard some questions raised about the spending from both the FinCom and the board, and so we invited Alan here to talk about spending for this year. Snow and ice deficit right now is like negative $50,000.
Okay. Alan, you want to talk about snow and ice deficit?
I had come to the board in February at some point and mentioned that I had to deficit spend. I was reluctant to get back to the board and get it in, get a formal vote. I thought it was all set by coming that one night. My mistake. It just was an oversight on me. And again, the board didn't meet that often. The administrator was ill at one point. There's a breakdown of every penny I spent right there, right in front of you. I don't know what else to tell you.
So
Gives you the number of storms.
almost $30,000 in salt on March 21st.
Well, that might have been when...
Correct.
Is that when the bill came, or when was the...
Well, we typically keep the shed full.
Yeah.
Especially towards the end, because the salt price never goes down. So you're either spending it now or you're spending it next year. So now I'm ahead of the game. We won't be buying salt for a while, you know, from next year. The shed is actually full. So you got basically 1,000 tons, maybe a little shy.
You do that, well, you typically fill it every year, don't you?
And do it every year.
So you bought it in early December.
I buy it as we use it.
My biggest problem is that the law is very explicit and you can't deficit spend. And I thank you for acknowledging that you shouldn't have done it, but, you know, I don't think it should happen again.
Don't you deficit spend every year?
Every year.
With only, the law says you have to have authorization from the Board of Selectmen.
Here's one of the issues. So,
I agree with what you're saying.
I don't think going forward that you should continue the practice of stocking up with salt at the end of the season. Because in this particular year, and maybe I'm a little over paranoid, essentially, we pay the snow and ice deficit with free cash that we certify in November. When you buy that salt in March, you are essentially you're authorizing yourself to take $30,000 of free cash to buy salt ahead of time. That's money that would have rolled into free cash that we might have needed in November. When you might not actually need it by November, we might. That's not, we're not authorized to buy things for the next fiscal year. There's a flow problem there. I mean, I don't have $50,000 is a light year, and I'm glad. Believe me, that's great, and I know you've always done it, but going forward,
I'd have to say that I'd have to say that the only difference between this year and prior years, in my opinion, is that it was just a light. We didn't get a ton of snow this year.
Right.
And in most times, we're deficit spending way earlier, and we don't even notice it because you don't feel it. And the fact that I guess there's a catch-22, not to stock up, but at the same time, it seems like a reasonable decision based upon the fact that the salt always generally creeps.
I agree, but that's not what the discussion is tonight.
Oh, okay.
Right, so the discussion is tonight that we're at a point of time right now where we've deficit spend. We need to take a vote tonight because the board never took a vote. The process should have been that Alan would come in front of us,
Yeah.
and then we would debate it at that time.
Fair enough.
That didn't happen this year. All right, so for whatever reason, you know, it was a judgment call, a mistake, whatever it was, we're at where we're at right now.
Right, I did come before the board and told you that I was gonna deficit spend
I don't remember.
in February.
I remember the conversation, but it was a very confusing conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
The vote is not the only issue, but I put the vote on there so that we would actually fix the problem. This topic was gonna be on here with or without a vote, because it was brought to me at both FinCom and from the board. I mean, it has to be addressed. Part of FinCom's concern is the amount that was spent post-February, when we didn't have a deficit. The deficit was created after he came to those meetings, and that's when we figured out there was never a vote in place. So that's when I put the vote on here. I mean, the FinCom has more concerns about spending, which is why this is really for them. Your concern is the authority to spend it.
Yeah, but in order to move it forward, so we just heard acknowledgement, all right? We put a plan in place for the future. Don't do it anymore, all right? We'll fix the problem. And